Will, you've written the story of the week, and it may well be the story of the year, and for many years to come. Let's headline it, shall we? Let's get some bit of clickbait in. The sale of English cricket. English cricket is selling itself for £500 million to future-proof the game. I mean, give us an overview.
It's a story that my colleague Nick Holt and I wrote at the end of last Friday, following a load of meetings between the ECB and the counties, the 18 first-class counties, their CEOs and their chairs, and as well as the MCC, who obviously own Lords and therefore are quite big players in the English game as well. And basically what they were discussing last week is what is now the inevitable sale of stakes in teams in the 100. The idea being to raise funds, as you say, to kind of future-proof the game, which is to some people like a seriously controversial idea. The idea of just inviting private investment into the game in England in the way that so many other countries have done with their franchise leagues. The 100 hasn't technically been a franchise league until now. It's been a kind of short form, slightly shorter form league than most of the T20 ones, but it's not had kind of franchise ownership. But that is where we're headed, probably ahead of the 2025 season. The sale will happen later this year, so we kind of we reveal the kind of next step, I suppose, on the road to that, which is that the counties have been given a kind of slightly loose, which is just before the kind of ECB board meeting a few days later, to kind of green light, if you like, just allow the next stage of this to happen, which is for them to kind of go out to the market in September. There are so many details about this that need to be fine-tuned. And the way the ECB have gone about it over the last year or so has been, I would say, it's been very collaborative. In that, when you'll remember when the 100 came in, when it was first announced in 2018, it was sort of slightly forced upon people. It was kind of ECB's idea. This time they've really tried to collaborate and stuff, but there's some interesting ways they've gone about it, and it looks kind of like the host venues, the eight current host venues, are going to majorly benefit from this agreement, while the other 10 counties are going to be kind of scratching around a little bit for their share. What is certain is that even if a lot of English cricket fans are seriously valuable ways to market this year, there's a lot of prospective ownership in the UK and abroad, inevitably in India. And I think some pretty familiar faces on the franchise ownership scene will pop up here as well, which will be interesting.
Well, me and you did some Q&As in India during the Test series, and with a lot of older members of the cricket and first class viewing figures. They were irate. They weren't too happy about the 100 whenever we threw it to the floor. Yeah. There was, apart from one really irate gentleman about your newspaper, but we'll come on to that another time. But I mean, they were anti-100, weren't they? Their members were anti-100, and you say there's been a sort of collaboration and a talking to the counties, but they've been given 2 weeks to either take it or leave it. Do you think that's fair? Is that the right way to go about it? Do you think there's mileage in them 10 counties coming together who aren't get the bigger the slice of the pie going, hold on, we need a bit more time and we need a bit more money if you're going to go down this route? And what happens if 8, which I'm sure it will inevitably become 10, if they do expand it further down the line? Do they then detract from the other 10? And where likely is Durham and one possibly other that comes into that conversation? You said there's a lot of meat to go on the bones, but it just seems that if there is meat to go on the bones, is 2 weeks enough?
Yeah, there's not a lot of time. So what the kind of thrust of our story last week was actually that the ECB have changed tack a little bit, and originally they were going to hold on personally to 19 of each team. Sorry, a lot of the numbers around this are really quite dry and dull, and they're quite even in print. They're quite difficult to get across. But they were gonna hold on to a stake in each team, which would give them a bit more control. But what the ECB have decided to do, and what they've offered the counties, is actually are going to sell their 49% each team, every team 49%, and the proceeds are then going to share the game, recreational game, the counties, etc. Now it's a really unfortunate, quite uncomfortable truth for English cricket to face, but a lot of these counties are in a really, really tight spot financially. That's the big grounds have stacked up quite a lot of debt, unsustainable losses, a couple of tough years, are on a slightly more even footing. Can they say no to these kind of figures? I'm not sure they can. The actuals have said that the deadline they've been given of May the 10th, not very long away. And as it happens, quite a lot of county AGMs are, kind of just after the start of the season and just after the actual year, after they publish their results. So I would think some members will have their say. I don't think that the scope for a member veto on this one, like there is with for instance, there was with the Strauss review. It's difficult to explain, but again, it's like an overarching commercial decision for the game that doesn't necessarily. I'm trying to be careful with my words here, but doesn't necessarily directly relate to the running of the counties, even though it so obviously does. It's not questions about county teams; it's questions about the 100 teams. So I'm not sure the scope for the members to kind of get in the way of this, if you like, in the way that they have with some change of English game before. But let's see. I don't know. Maybe there'll be big kickoffs at a few AGMs over next week or two, and we'll see. But I can't see it myself.
Well, I'm going to ask you for your impression now, okay? So I don't want to catch you out or get you into trouble. But this sort of 49-51%, is it your impression that people in English cricket believe that they can retain control? If they sell these franchises for £500 million, do they really believe that retaining 51% will actually give them control? If a Saudi conglomerate or an IPL team has forked out 40 or 50 million quid. I mean, my experience with the SA20 is, the Cricket South Africa are nominally majority shareholders, but they don't get a sandwich in board meetings. And so is it your impression that they actually think they can retain control? And also, if you put 500 million quid in a high interest account, is that enough to future-proof the game?
Well, yeah, that's a very fair question. The final one there, I don't know. The belief that the reason they sort of seem to the reason private equity is coming, or private investment is coming into the game in England generally, is there's an overall belief that broadcast rights have peaked, and that the deal with English cricket's deal with Sky has been what's underpinned its finances since 2005. But that the feeling is that maybe the next deal won't be worth quite as much, and costs are rising, and it's a competitive player market, and all the rest. So you need more money. So that's why they've gone to private investment to get that money. Whether they can keep control, probably not. No. As you say with the SA20, these guys who are investing aren't interested in minority stakes. They're not interested in being the junior partner. They're not interested in being the junior partners in a relationship. So in the end, they're gonna be selling these teams off to majority shareholders. But what they've tried to do, and what I actually, to be honest, what I disagree with, is that I think it's a noble pursuit what they've tried, but what they're doing is they're gifting 51% to each host county. Now, I think that isn't right, because I don't actually think teams should have a host county. It should be shared across the game, and I think the proceeds, the way if it was me doing this, I would have sold stakes in the team, but I would have in all of the teams, but I would have shared all the proceeds equally across the 19 shareholders of a recreational game, and then I would have provided the host county with big hosting fees for hosting those teams. Instead, what they've done is they've tried to link the 100 a bit more closely to county cricket, which is a noble idea, but I don't think it is in real danger of widening the haves and have-nots in county cricket. You look at Surrey and that 51% stake in Oval Invincibles. I'm sat here at the Oval now after Surrey beat Hampshire today, and it's looking gorgeous. It's it's this premier venue in central London. Like there are going to be, I think Lords is going to be more valuable, but I think the Oval Invincibles will be the next most valuable one, and I think they could make serious coin for not that much of that stake, of that 51% stake. And then the likes of, I don't know, Leicestershire or Gloucestershire, who don't have a team currently in the 100, are not going to have that money available to them. So they're just going to have a share of what the ECB sells. So that's my fear. I think the money will be amazing for the likes of Gloucestershire and Leicestershire, but I think the gap between the haves and the have-nots will get wider.
And Will, what else does it mean for English cricket? I'm with you on that one. I think the point that you make is absolutely spot on. I know Mark Butcher's been talking on another podcast about the tough conversation of 18 counties. Are we at a point where we are going to start losing counties, and is that the best for the game? And I don't disagree with Butch many times, but I do disagree on this one. I think we desperately need 18 counties because it's not about 100. It's about producing players from all four corners of the UK to try and make the England team, English cricket better. Where if this does get sold off like it does, and the counties, come in and say we've got no choice, we have to take it because we are strapped for cash. What does it mean for our cricket calendar, and where does our players? Because like you said before, you ain't coming in for a minority stake. They're coming in like the SA20, and they're going to run the game for a 6-8 week period in this country. What happens with the England cricket team if they're playing at the same time?
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be a big battleground, actually. That again, these guys, they don't come in for minority stakes, and they also don't come in for second best when it comes to players. So this year, for instance, the 100 does clash with England test matches I think at both ends of the 100, actually, at the start and the finish. I would think that in future summers, just like in 2023, when it was quite controversial, the Ashes were over by the end of July, I would think we'll be seeing things like that a bit more, where the 100 does actually get a window of exclusivity, because is the 100 something that is going to really do its job without the likes of Ben Stokes or Johnny Bairstow, the kind of cross-format superstars, without them bothering Harry Brook? If they see it as a moment to take a break, well, that's a problem for the 100. So yeah, and these guys, let's take the Ambani family, who famously own Mumbai Indians. They now own MI Cape Town, team in the UAE as well. If they buy a team they're going to want to have their top players playing. So yeah, I think that the shape of the summer will be a bit more like that. I do believe that the on offer can make a real difference to the cash accounts. I believe that. I think it can really help them. But whether the 18 is kind of can be, I don't know. It's that tired old line that if we were starting today, you obviously wouldn't do it this way. You wouldn't have your 18 counties, and you wouldn't have a team called Leicestershire or whatever. Yeah, well, of English cricket, and those two all produce players, some better, admittedly, but they do all have a role to play in the English cricket ecosystem, and it would be a shame to lose 1, 2, 3, and maybe it would be more convenient for scheduling and all those kind of things. And I'm sure there are people at the top of the well, maybe not at the very top, but some who are involved in running the game, that have in their quieter moments have wondered whether it might be easier if a couple were lost. But I don't think overall it would be good for the wider the ecosystem of the game.
Finally, Will, we've already seen South Africa send a C team to New Zealand to play test matches. It's coming. It'll happen if this sale goes ahead. There aren't 15 months or 16 months in a year. And so England will be fielding weekend test teams, I think. And finally, heard any whispers at all about turning it from a 16.4 into a T20 tournament?
I don't think that'll happen immediately, but I don't think that'll happen to the broadcast cycle, and that runs 25 to 28. So possibly in 2029. I think the 100 format, obviously, it's really wound people up, and I wouldn't have chosen to do it myself. I don't think it's necessarily better than T20, but what I will say is it is my view that it's a bit of a red herring in around the thing generally, and that actually it does serve a purpose in the competition's current format, which is that they play. One of the accidental successes actually of the tournament is they play this. They have a women's game and a men's on the ground on the same day. I think the object of that would be defeated slightly, and I don't think it would be possible. What I would say is, if in the next few years, where the women's 100 is not being played as double headers alongside the men's game, like if they're giving the women's tournament a different schedule essentially, and playing it at different venues at different times, that's when I think it could become a T20 competition. But while it remains this really nice package where they play 2 games in a day, I think it will remain 100 balls. I could be wrong. I don't think the conversation will ever go away because the 100 ball format is elsewhere. People are silly and 5 ball overs and all the rest of it. And yeah, it is a bit, but it kind of works for the event that the 100 currently has on.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.